So we talked about Article 13 earlier this week, and I said that I was going to look into some stuff for Article 13. You guys have tweeted me stuff, sent me videos. So here's a quick kind of update / first we're going to have a refresher on what's going on with Article 13, the controversial copyright law in the European Union. Okay, so quick refresher, what is Article 13? So we turn to the BBC. What is Article 13? The EU's copyright directive explained. All right. So Google has been particularly vocal about the proposed law, which it said could change the web as we know it. Article 13 of the EU Copyright Directive states services such as YouTube could be held responsible if their users upload copy-protected movies and music. In a few weeks, MEPs will vote to decide whether it becomes law. The EU last introduced new copyright laws in 2001. The EU says it wants to make copyright rules fit for the digital era, but not everyone agrees with the proposed changes. If the UK leaves the EU with a deal and the directive becomes law, it would apply to the UK during any transition period. So what is Article 13? Article 13 is the part of the new EU copyright directive that covers how online content sharing services should deal with copyright protected content, such as television programs, movies, music. All right, it refers to services that primarily exist to give the public access to protected works and other protected subject matter uploaded by its users. So it's likely to cover services such as YouTube, Dailymotion, and SoundCloud. Here are the exemptions: nonprofit online encyclopedias, open source software, cloud storage services, online marketplace communication services. So what does this say? Article 13, it is not, all right. Article 13 says content sharing services must license copyright protected material from the rights holders. If that is not possible, materials posted on the service, the company may be held liable unless it can demonstrate it made best efforts to get permission, it made best efforts to ensure that material specified by rights holders was not made available, it acted quickly to remove, there's the big one, it acted quickly to remove any infringing material of which it was made aware. These rules apply to the services that have been available in the EU for more than 3 years, or have an annual turnover of more than £10 million. Or, excuse me, 10 million euro. Yeah, that's euro. I apologize. Or $11.2 million. Article 13 says it shall in no way affect legitimate uses, and people will be allowed to use bits of copyrighted protected material for the purpose of criticism, review, parody. All right, so that's similar to the copyright law here in the United States. In the United States, the copyright law is basically similar. I'm not fluent in the copyright law in the EU or in the UK or what the European Union, but it sounds like it's very similar. You are allowed to use some copyrighted material for the sake of criticism, for the sake of parody, and in the U.S. for the sake of education, and that falls under fair use. It sounds like in the European Union this is very similar, and those countries have similar copyright observations. So basically, you should be protected. Say you're showing a news clip, and you're giving commentary on it, or you're doing parody, or you're satirizing it. That should all be protected. But where does the red flag go up? Well, the red flag goes up because these services are being held liable now, like YouTube and organizations like that. They might just tear down stuff that uses any copywritten material whatsoever, even if it's fair use, because they're trying to just sort of practice the better safe than sorry way of doing things. And this is already happening, by the way. I mean, there have been content creators. I believe Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report is one who got a copyright strike for engaging in something that was clearly fair use. He was either engaging in commentary or something like that. I'm sure it was likely commentary because that's the type of content he does. I didn't see the content in question, but that's what he was likely doing. It fell under fair use, what he was doing. He got a strike anyway. So this is already happening. Something like this would just amplify that by a lot. So YouTube is already doing that to content creators just in the United States even. So if the EU, if this all goes through, that's going to be amplified by a lot. So So, again, it says it will no way affect legitimate uses, so criticism, review, parody, that's all protected, they say, but, you know, even though that's there in verbiage, you don't know how this is going to be unrolled on the platform end, i.e. what YouTube and similar platforms are going to do. So that's the problem. All right, so let's go to an update for today. So here's some news. They've decided that memes are exempt. Article 13, memes exempt as EU backs controversial copyright law. Copyright laws, which critics say could change the internet, have been voted in by the European Parliament. The new rules, according to the controversial Article 13, will hold tech firms responsible for material posted without copyright permission. Sharing memes and GIFs will still be allowed under the new laws. Many musicians and creators say the legislation will compensate artists fairly, but others argue that it will destroy user-generated content. Copyright is the legal right that allows an artist to protect how their original work is used. Tech companies have argued that artists are already paid fairly under the current system. Well, that may or may not be true. Google said it would harm Europe's creative and digital industries. Well, that may also be true. All right. High-profile figures who have campaigned against the EU copyright directive include Wyclef Jean and web innovator Sir Tim Berners-Lee, while Debbie Harry and Sir Paul McCartney have been among its supporters. Paul McCartney, that's... You know, I guess for Paul McCartney, maybe he is super, super sensitive for anything involving trademark or copyright or rights or publishing rights or anything like that because of what happened to him with Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson outbid him for the Beatles catalog, do you guys remember when that happened? I guess maybe Paul McCartney is super sensitive to issues like that because of his own experience. So now if it's just like, this will help copyright holders, he's like, I'm for it. I mean, that's my guess. That's my speculation why Paul McCartney would be somebody in favor of this, because there are some concerns over this bill, as we've been pointing out. All right. So here's the two clauses that are causing the most controversy. These are Article 11 and Article 13. Article 11 states that search engines and news aggregate platforms should pay to use links from news websites. Article 13 holds larger tech companies responsible for material posted without a copyright license. Tech companies already remove music and videos which are copyrighted, but under the new laws, they will be more liable for any copyrighted content. So this means they're going to respond accordingly. This doesn't just mean if someone uploads a movie for no reason other than to share a free movie, it's going to be taken down. That's going to be taken down. But they're also going to be very careful with everything else, which means if you're a content creator on YouTube, you do news-related content, you reference copywritten materials to do what you do, they might be cracking down. So that includes people like me. That includes people like The Humanist Report, The Jimmy Dore Show, Nico House, Lee Camp. You get the idea. List goes on and on. Graham Elwood. So, Kim Iverson. You get the idea. But they're saying that memes are excluded. It was Article 13 which prompted fear over the future use of memes and GIFs, stills, animated, or short video clips that go viral, since they mainly rely on copyrighted scenes from TV and film. Critics claimed Article 13 would have made it nearly impossible to upload even the tiniest part of a copyrighted work to Facebook, YouTube, or any other site. However, specific tweaks to the law made earlier this year made memes safe for purposes of quotation, criticism, review, caricature, parody, and parody. The European Parliament said that memes would be specifically included from the directive, although it was unclear how tech firms would be able to force that rule with a blanket filter. Here's the deal. They probably wouldn't have a blanket filter. That's the situation here. That's the concern here. You know, in verbiage, this law sounds okay. They're like, hey, if you're engaging in commentary or criticism or parody, that's all protected. That's different. You're creating your own creation in that point. That's protected under copyright law. U.S. copyright law refers that to fair use. I don't know if they use the same terminology in other countries, but the term you hear applied to that is fair use. So, and also, memes are exempt. So in verbiage, this all sounds okay. Protecting copyright holders, they should be protected. Totally. I'm all for that. But it's kind of skating this line of protecting creators and copyright holders while also allowing the creative marketplace of ideas to flourish and not be stifled and censored unnecessarily. So in verbiage, this thing sounds okay, but when you kind of take it a step further and think, how will this be unrolled? Because they're holding these tech companies accountable now, well, these tech companies likely will overreach to protect themselves. They'll likely over-censor, over-remove to protect themselves. Because, let's be honest, these big tech companies, they don't really care about freedom of information or free speech, even in most cases. They just want to protect their bottom line. That's priority number one. This is about money. So if they have to take down a bunch of material and content that is fair use, if they have to do that to protect themselves, they're willing to do that. I mean, they've already demonstrated that, and with this bill, that's just going to be amplified by a lot. All right, so let's see what else there is to this article. So, massive blow. Robert Ashcroft, a chief executive of PRS for Music, which collects royalties from music artists, welcomed the directive as a massive step forward for consumers and creatives. It's about making sure that ordinary people can upload videos and music to platforms like YouTube without being held liable for copyright. That responsibility will henceforth be transferred to the platforms, he said. However, the campaign group Open Knowledge International described it as a massive blow for the internet. We now risk the creation of a more closed society at the very time we should be using digital advances to build a more open world where knowledge creates power for the many, not the few. I think that kind of summarizes it. Well, Article 13, here's another thing that... So Kathy Berry, the senior lawyer at Linklaters, said more detail was required about how Article 13 would be enforced exactly. While Article 13 may have noble aims, in its current form it functions as little more than a set of ideals with very little guidance on exactly which service providers will be caught by it or what steps will be sufficient to comply. European Parliament Rapporteur Axel Voss said the legislation was designed to protect people's livelihoods. Well, it could also destroy people's livelihoods. That's the problem. This directive is an important step towards collecting a situation which has allowed a few companies to earn huge sums of money without properly remunerating the thousands of creatives and journalists whose work they depend on. It helps make the internet ready for the future, a space which benefits everyone, not only a powerful few. So, obviously, I'm all about copyright holders getting their fair share. Of course I'm for that. As a content creator myself, I'm 110% for that, in every circumstance. Musicians have been screwed royally since day one, in particular. And the streaming services screw over musicians constantly, all the time. They earn pennies on the dollar for their music. However, an article like this, it goes into this gray area where they will be over-censoring content that is fair use, that is essential to the news discussion in the world sphere. Those are the concerns here, and those are very valid concerns. So the question becomes, well, how do we properly compensate everybody while also trying to avoid a situation like this from happening where the internet is being over-censored? And I think that this bill falls short of it. I think there are way too many red flags here concerning this bill. And maybe it is noble in nature. Again, the verbiage of it is okay, but the idea that you're holding these tech companies liable, and there's no procedural guidance as to how these tech companies need to oversee all of this. Now, if they had a clause in there that said there will also be penalties, here's what I would like to see, because, I'm not playing the violin for YouTube or any other company like that in this situation. What I would like to see is a clause in there that says, if you remove content that is protected speech, that is, or protected fair use speech in regards to copyright, if you do that, you also face a penalty. That's the solution I would like to see. You know, you face a penalty if you don't make a reasonable attempt. So if somebody's just uploading movies on YouTube, and that's violating copyright, and, you know, like, YouTube's got to remove that. I get that. I understand that. That's fine. And YouTube can now be held liable. And I'm just using YouTube as the example because it's the easiest one that comes to my mind. This stream is probably being throttled as we speak. But, you know, that's fine. However, let's not allow these tech companies to overreach just to protect themselves. So there should also be something in there. If Article 13 is concerned about protecting those who are engaging in criticism and commentary and satire and parody, everything that's protected under fair use, if you want to protect those people as well, which you should, there should be another clause in there that says, oh, and by the way, if you have a blatant negligent overreach, you could face a penalty as well. So if you're just you see any copyright material, you don't, you just blanket, give them a strike, take them down, tear them down, without any looking into, oh, wait, this is a news and politics thing. Oh, wait, this is commentary. Oh, wait, this is satire. This is a parody. This is protected. This is okay. This is permissible because it's its own creation now. If you don't make a reasonable attempt to make sure that you're not taking down that content, you could also face a penalty. That's what I would like to see in this bill. That's what this bill needs to give people a little more peace of mind. But it doesn't have that. So that's what's at stake now, and this is moving forward. They're saying they're exempting memes. They're saying they're protecting content which is, you know, criticism or commentary or parody or satire, which, you know, protects most things that are fair use of copyright material, that protects the fair use. But it's up to these tech companies to abide by this and to protect themselves. So even if something's fair use, there's a good chance they're going to delete it anyway. And that's the problem. And they've already done stuff like this. So this is just going to amplify that. So this bill is not good. If there were certain other things in it, it could have the potential to be good. But right now, it ain't good. That's Article 13.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your